Okay, well, welcome everybody to our Revenue Accelerator webinar by Mr. Allan Colman. I don't know what type of introduction you'd like, Dr. Colman, but we just like to thank you for being here this afternoon with us and reading over your bio and what some of your talking points are going to be. I think this is going to be such a valuable instruction for people today. So we're looking forward to it. Thank you for being here.
Good, thank you very much. And I see Larry Johnson is on. And Larry, thank you for helping to arrange this program. We've done a few others with chambers and other groups, and I'm delighted to be here. This program came about, actually the course that we developed, the 90-day revenue sprint, came about starting last December. My publisher, who's done 4 other books for me, wanted to do a 5th book, and we actually had an outline and almost ready to go to print. And he said, you know what? We had done 2 adult coloring books on marketing. We were going to do another one. And he said, you know what? The adult coloring book is dead. And he said, why don't we come up with a whole new idea, new concept? And we thrashed things around. And his key was, let's do programs that relate to speed, pedal to the metal. And that's how we came up with this concept of trying to assemble the most viable, important, accountable program ideas, put them into a single course and offer it to people. And that's how this program came about. When the pandemic hit, along about April, we decided to accelerate it. And one of the key elements I'd like you all to remember is that our program, our course, is designed for people who want to get out of the pandemic, or people in businesses that are hitting their numbers and want to even improve them. It is not for people who are sitting around complaining that, oh, the pandemic won't let me do anything. It's for the 2 that want to get up and out. So with that, let me share the screen and start this information going forward. Nick, I need you to enable me to share my screen.
Yes, I just gave you the permission. Perfect.
Okay, thank you. Unfortunately, it is blocking me from moving this to the full side. Here we go. Okay. The program is called the 90-day revenue sprint. It is not intended for people to stay on for a long period of time, because what we intend for you to do is to accelerate your sales and your revenue generation efforts, and some other things may have to be delayed. We understand that, and it's a program that works. It's based on about 30 years of experience my partner and I have in accelerating revenue with clients throughout the country and a couple international. Let me give you an idea of what some of the priorities are. First of all, we want to start out with focus. There's a Russian proverb that says, don't chase 2 rabbits. If you chase 2 rabbits, you will not catch either one. So the first important element is to focus on revenue generation and sales. In the middle, there's a bobblehead. And this represents something that Mary Barra said when she was appointed president and CEO of General Motors. And what she said was, in response to a question, what's your biggest challenge? She said head nodders, kind of like a bobblehead, head nodders. Those are people who we ask to do something, or we ask them to go ahead with a new approach we're taking. They nod their heads yes, and they keep doing what they were doing before. And so the emphasis here is accountability, not only for yourself, but if you have a marketing team or if you have others in your organization that have some sales or some marketing responsibility, you've got to make sure that they're doing the jobs that you've assigned them. If they need to understand the why as well as the what, make sure they understand that. The last picture is the picture of a British bus. And that's for Sir Richard Branson. We use a number of his quotes and ideas in the lectures and seminars that we do. And the quote I like as an overview for these other 2 leads is, if you miss an opportunity, it's like missing a bus. Another one will be coming along if you keep your eyes open. An opportunity is like a bus. If you miss one, another one will be coming along if you keep your eyes open. So you're looking at focus, you're looking at accountability, and you're looking at and encouraging people for you to look for opportunities. And that's what we call the sprint mentality. You'll see some cartoons on some of the slides that we have. My partner and I collected comments that we've heard from executives, marketing professionals, sales leaders, and others about the process of selling. And this one, most salespeople are really dumb. I'm looking for someone that understands my business. Came from a senior executive at a very large Fortune 50 company. And she was tired of people coming in and trying to sell her something and not even understanding their business. So she developed a 5-minute rule. You either talk about my business within 5 minutes or you're out. I ran into her about a year ago at Dodger Stadium when they were still playing there. And she was kidding me that she still had her 5-minute rule, and she knew I was interested in it just because it was so important. Now, why have we talked about trying to educate more people into selling on a priority basis? Number one, there was a survey done by the Outsiders organization in June. And they surveyed over 700 CEOs and presidents of companies that were between $2 and $5 million and $20 million. And the number one need they clarified with her was the need for sales execution. Sales execution. We also discovered in a survey done by one of my colleagues at Cal State Dominguez Hills of 50 different business schools and undergraduate programs in 50 different universities. And they found that about 20% of all of the alumni from these 50 different colleges had some type of sales responsibility. And a accompanying problem is most business schools today, even if they had sales management training in the past, no longer offer it. So we believe that what we're doing today is extremely important. And their objectives, we're going to talk about in a minute. There are 3, and we're going to display and discuss the sales funnel that we use. It's a simplified visual way to organize, track, and complete opportunities into leads and leads into business. It is not business development. For those of you that believe marketing and business development and sales are related, they're not. Marketing is getting found. It's the process of social media, of your website, of getting speeches arranged, of participating on boards of directors and organizations and so on. It's getting found. Business development is beginning the sales process itself, and sales execution is when you're finally in front of people or maybe Zooming with people, and you're then accelerating what you're doing to close the sales. It is sales execution. Okay. There are 3 main phases. We have in our virtual video program, that's the course online, we follow the DASH concept. And as you know, when the DASH begins, it's on your mark, get set, go. And we've changed our modules. There are 20 lessons. They are from 5 to 8 minutes each. And the first group are on your mark. If you're going to undertake a 90-day sprint, what do you really know? What do you have to have organized? What's ready to go? So that's our on the mark phase. The next phase is go, and it's a series of lessons. You're now out there. You are in the 90-day period. What do you need to keep doing? What do you need to refresh? How do you come back to reality and make sure other things are happening? How do you hold people accountable? And the last section is get set. That is, what are references that you might need if you encounter a particular obstacle or problem? What are their special approaches that you might need if you're now dealing with selling your product or your service in an industry that you're not quite familiar with? So that's how this program is structured, and that's how we're going to discuss it today. Again, our sprint is not meant to kiss a lot of frogs. Uh-oh, there goes Sheila. That's my pet cheetah. She wants people to chase her to get out in front. So if you see her once in a while, it's a reminder. So it's not meant to kiss a lot of frogs, And again, it is sales execution for really accelerating your revenue growth. I mentioned Sir Richard Branson's quote. I won't go through it again. Here are the 3 objectives that we want you to understand. This is what we work with. This is how we get people to accelerate revenue. The program that we offer doubles the number of prospects. It increases your leads and opportunities and identifies and uses hidden assets. And occasionally people will ask, well, what's a hidden asset? For example, suppose you used to have an alliance with another company or another firm that wasn't competitive with you when you tried to sell your products or your services or some kind of combined effort, and you haven't done it lately and it worked before. Maybe you want to reactivate it. So you go and look at what you were using before that worked. And you can also look at things that didn't work or might no longer work and make some decisions about whether to reactivate them, to set them aside, to replace them. But remember, anything that you were using cost money, and it was an investment on your part and others, and it may be worth reconsidering how you use it, at least during this 90-day period of time. Nick, I can stop for a second and see if there are any questions before we move on.
I don't see any questions at this point in the chat. So to reiterate to people, if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to use the chat and we will address them as they come in.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We've developed this accelerator funnel to demonstrate how best to organize your leads, your opportunities, and follow through with them. New business only comes from 3 sources: clients and customers, referrals, and prospects. Prospects, we want you to identify those people, those organizations, those companies that you've met with, that you've been introduced to at conferences, that you've heard speak. Wherever you've got a prospect, put them in one of 3 lists. The next list is referrals. And referrals, if you remember, work 2 different ways. In the first way, a referral may be you make a referral to a customer or a client of yours or somebody else that you know. And the other way is they may be referring people to you. You need to collect and go back and refresh your memory on who the primary referrals were in both directions and put them in a master list. And then you take your clients and your customers and you put them in another list. And you can go back as far as you want. But in order to make this 90-day sprint work, we want you to then take those 3 lists and identify the top priority prospects that you have from those 3 lists. And then take the top potential priorities from the 3 lists, you combine them into 10 potential leads, and you put them into the accelerator. And the funnel that you use looks like this. And what we recommend is that you put the first 10 top priorities, any of them from those 3 lists, onto the top of the funnel. And as you start with those 10 prospects the first week. And as you contact them, if you get a second date, if you are asked for a proposal, if you get a follow-up meeting scheduled, you move them down to the next funnel down below. And those are your hotter leads. And when you take somebody out of the top and you move them to the bottom, you replace them with another person. So there are always 10 people. Here's how mine looks. I don't know that you can read this, but I work with this every day. This is the second one I've been using in November. And so when I get somebody from here and I've talked with them and they're a potential, for example, when Nick and I first talked, he was up here, then he became down here, and now he's gracious enough to have me speaking. And so this is a system, it's visual, it simplifies your leads. You can pick it up at any time. And if you are somebody who's supervising people that are working for you in a sales capacity or in a partial sales capacity, this is the accountability factor, because you have this to look at your own and theirs every single week to keep the pressure on to move the business ahead. In order to get the sprint going, there are a number of things that people need to be aware of. If you're going to build that sprint funnel, if you're going to highlight the priorities in your clients or customers, your prospects, and your referrals, there are things that you have to keep in mind. And there are some important numbers that we like to talk about. The first is a series of percentages from a book entitled Business Breakthroughs, written by Tony Robbins and Chet Holmes. Chet Holmes was a good friend of mine for many years, and he worked with Tony for many, many years. They had a series of research that showed of every 100% of people that might be in your priority lists, only 3% are ready to buy today. So when you're figuring out your priorities, you really need to assess who that 3% might be, who's really ready to buy today if you approach them. The next 7% are willing to listen. So the world that you're facing, at least in this scenario of research, is only 10% of all of those people you've identified as potential leads. And so that helps you prioritize a bit more as you get your leads and opportunities from the top of the funnel into the bottom, and hopefully leading to business or proposals or speech setups or whatever it is. The next 30% might be interested. The middle 30% don't care about you. This is according to their research. And the final 30% don't even know you exist. So it helps you focus on what the narrow field is. They have some other research, and I've heard numbers like this from other marketing and salespeople as well. According to their research, it takes 80% of the people at least 5 contacts before they get business. Putting it another way, it takes 5 contacts 80% of the time to get business. The number I hear thrown about most is 8 by most professionals. If you're going to accelerate business, which we recommend, you look at those 8, you look at the 5, and again, it helps you narrow down and focus. And as part of what we try to get people to do, to refine and refresh their presentations and their programs. And one of the things Jeff Bezos was talking about when I had the interruption, however that happened, was his quote is, "Your brand is what stays in the room after you leave the room." Your brand is your takeaway. It's the key variable that you want people to remember that distinguishes you and differentiates you from all of the other players in your business, in your field. So keep that in mind. The brand is what remains in the room after you leave the room. In working with your associates, make sure you have one key takeaway, one key brand term or phrase that appears often in your discussion, in the emails, in the Zooms, in the conversations that you have in proposals. So if one thing is memorable, it's that. Another number is 4. We're all selling right now to 4 different generations, and they want information differently, and they give back information differently. So for example, baby boomers want value, they want solutions. And they want to hear solutions as a way to solve a problem or a need or what keeps them up at night. You know that old term, to ask what keeps them up at night. The Gen Zers on the other end, they're all digital. They don't want anything verbal if they can avoid it. And they want to hear from you digitally, and they want to give you answers back digitally. And I'm not sure you're aware of this, but given the quarantine that we've all been under, in 2033, there's going to be a brand new generation. And it's called the quarantines. Sorry, I somebody offered that to me the other day. When you're selling to people, most salespeople will tell you the need is for solutions and benefits. And one of the ways you offer solutions is to have really good questions ready to ask when you go into a meeting, a Zoom call, an initial contact, whatever it is. One of the key things we want people to have is answers. And the way you get answers is by having good questions that are based upon research you've done, even if it's a long-time customer or client. What are their competitors doing? What new products might be coming out in the field? Are there any new tax laws that might impact them? Does the weather impact them? Is there distribution centers? Are there distribution centers working, or are they starting to sublet those? The range of questions are numerous. And one of the key things about this is what IBM says, get your customers talking 60% of the time. And you do that by asking questions. And there's an even more important value by asking questions that show you've done some research and you know the customer, the client a little bit better. Let's assume you say, well, have you had any problems with this? Or it sounds like there's a difficulty. And the person says, yeah, here's the problem we're having. Well, we had a similar problem to that. You want to hear how we've solved it. And if they say yes, hopefully they will, you explain what you've done. And would this be help to you in the future? And if they say yes, and many times they will, you've just done something that many salespeople don't do consciously, but it's the most effective sales tool there is. You've converted their need to your value. Because if they like what you've done and they think it might help them, that's a value, that's a brand, that's a takeaway that they will remember and that you need to continue to reinforce. So the best example I can give you of how to remember converting their need to a value is think about Henry Ford. He had to convince people to leave horses and drive cars. He had to convince people to stop buying hay and oats and start buying gasoline. Think about the task he had to face to convince people to change their need to his value. And I use that as an example for people to remember the conversion factor, how important that really is. There's some other numbers that I think are important and get to know. And one of the things companies often do is spend a lot of time and energy and people cost in building a marketing plan. According to an article I read in The Economist about 6 or 7, maybe 8 months ago, 95% of all marketing plans are never implemented. 95% of marketing plans are never implemented. And what that's referring to is all of the energy and time that goes into so much detail that people don't have time to use the detail or to impress other people to use it as well. Come back to what Mary Barra said. You've got to show them the why in order for them to do the what. That's why we also recommend 90-day action plans. The 90-day sprint is one example of that. People can concentrate and keep the pedal to the metal for 90 days. However, they can't keep it going that way. And so the second quarter's marketing plan, if you want to use that term, will get back to a more normal range of things that you have to do. Selling still needs to be a top priority, but you may need to bring along more marketing to raise your profile in a certain business community or a certain industry, or to sell a new product or to offer a new service if you're a firm. So those are some of the numbers that we think are critical to remember. And in dealing with a 90-day sprint, where we're working with people, once they purchase the program, we're available to talk with them all the time. And if they come up with a particular issue or problem, we work to help them solve. One of the other questions we're frequently asked is, well, okay, I don't have a lot of contacts. I don't have a lot of customers yet. And there's a marketing bromide that says you go where they go, you know who they know, and you read what they read. It sounds simple. Right now, it's pretty hard to go where they go. But if there are Zoom meetings of an organization, of a society, of a convention, of an industry panel, you can get online, you can get to meet people, you can start offering advice or assistance, even in the Zoom process, and make connections to follow up afterward. It's not a completely lost cause. Know who they know. When you're building that list of priorities that we've talked about to put into the accelerator funnel, what begins to happen there is that you find more and more opportunities. They have to be pursued. You have to do research, but they come out and develop. And so maybe you don't start your 90-day race, your dash, your sprint, until you have more information available. But you start it and you work it hard. And in coming back to the accountability factor, it used to be that if we were all in offices, it was a lot easier to be in touch with folks, to track what they're doing, to offer assistance and help, to build a new approach to an opportunity that comes along. It is more difficult. It doesn't mean it can't be done. And for people who are in business for themselves, you have to hold yourself accountable. I had somebody not too long ago say that she just couldn't get things done. Her problem was that she had too many things she had to worry about. She had a retail store, a very successful one, a small one, but a very successful one. And I asked her, could you take an hour out of the day, once a week, and do nothing but sell? Well, probably, but I keep getting, and her key words were, I keep getting interrupted by emails. And I offered her a suggestion. I said, turn your phone off for an hour. Unless there's an out and out emergency, which rarely happens, or unless a client has a real problem, try it. She started with a half an hour at the time. And pretty soon she was up to about an hour. She felt comfortable doing it. She found nothing got missed. She asked people to start calling one of her assistants, or asked her assistant to actually take her phone in the back, not tell her that there were calls coming in or texts, and respond for her. And she started finding over time, by accelerating even an hour a week to start, she was beginning to generate more new business. It's an important thing to keep in mind. You can generate more new business. There's another element that I'd like to talk about for a minute. And we have an expression, ABR, always build relationships. Even by Zoom, building a relationship, getting to know somebody, talking to them about their goals, their aspirations, their projects, their products, their services, and what you do over time will bring in more new business or referrals, or maybe generate a prospect for you from someone else in their organization. You just don't know. Jada Pinkett Smith has a wonderful quote: direct relationships are the only way to increase communication. And she's absolutely right. Direct communications is the only way to build successful relationships. So as you're looking at your opportunities, keep in mind with folks that you don't know well, or people that you've known for many years, keeping the relationship going, finding new ways to build it are really important. There's another concept I'd like you to think about, and it's called maximizing rejection. I can't see all of you on the screen right now, but how many of you have gotten no's? How many of you proposed business or offered the people or the person that you were talking to said no? We've all heard no's, correct? We've all heard no's. Okay, Nick, think about it. You've made an investment in time in dealing with this person or this company or this agency or whoever it is, or this firm. And by the way, this all applies to nonprofit organizations that are looking to grow revenue. We do have a couple folks like that we work with, but getting back to this, you get a no. You've spent time, as they have spent time, discussing what the lead or the opportunity or the service or the product, whatever it is, and ultimately the decision is no. Instead of just casting them aside, keep in touch. And if you stay in touch, let's say 3 times a year, wouldn't it be worth it if you wind up getting maybe 5% of that business from all of the no's? Think about it. 5% of the business over many months, or maybe a year or two. You've made the investment, you've spent the time, you've spent the money, the investment is there, and it's pure ROI. So maximize rejection. Make sure that those people know you're still out there, that you care about them, that you understand their industry. If you have a new service or product, great. If you've heard something about one of their competitors, let them know that you've heard it. Is there anything you can do to commiserate? I mean, you can make fun out of some of those things. It's that communication that Jada Pinkett Smith was talking about that becomes really important. And you can build relationships with people who aren't buying what you're selling. And you can ultimately build a certain percentage of them for new business. There's something else I mentioned at the beginning. We also urge people to look at assets, hidden or underutilized, and decide whether they want to reactivate them or not. You may remember one of the really great management gurus in this country was Peter Drucker, who taught at Claremont College for many, many years. And he was the one, if you may remember, the Peter principle. People rise to their highest level of what did he call it? Incapability, something like that. But he had another concept called creative abandonment. And what he meant by that was when you look at what you are doing and spending money on and time on, is it producing the kind of results that you expected? And if it's not, consider cutting it, abandoning it, or postponing it for a year, or put it in the back burner. And what about things that you used to do that were costing money or time and used to work? Make a decision. Should it be reactivated, refreshed, brought up to the surface? Did it work before? Could it work in the environment that you're in, that your competitors are in, that your targets are in, that the channels that you're trying to market to are utilizing? All of those elements come into play. So his concept of creative abandonment means look more closely at what you're doing and what you've done before. Did it work? Doesn't it work? Can it be refreshed or rejuvenated? Or do you want to scrap it? And if you scrap something, keep in mind that may provide some additional time from you or your staff or your support team. It may provide some additional money that you were spending that might be available for something else, or you put it in the bank and save it for a special 90-day revenue sprint or some other effort that you're going to undertake. So the range of things that you have available to you are really significant. And that's why we try to keep people moving ahead with making sure they understand. I don't want them to remember, I don't want you to remember all of the numbers, but we talked about 50%. All of your new business comes from 3 sources, and 50% every year should come from those sources: clients and customers, prospects, and referrals. 95% of marketing plans are not implemented. Our approach is don't spend as much time building a marketing plan that has so much detail that nobody will get a chance to read it and use it. And the time it takes for people to provide the input is basically wasted. Look at what the real priorities are. Build sales and marketing, getting found into what you're doing, and make it a lead in order to keep your business on top. Some of the other numbers, the four different generations that we're selling to right now. If your team or if you yourself are the lead, think about who you talk to, who you're selling to. Are you having obstacles all of a sudden from a certain company or group that's staffed by people that maybe you're not really relating to? That happens. And maybe you eliminate, maybe you make a creative abandonment decision to say, you know what? I just don't know how to deal with people in that group. And maybe we're going to spend our time and money on some of the other groups right now. You don't have to disband them completely, but you can reprioritize what you're doing. So let me stop for a minute because I'm trying to cover a lot of ground that I hope will be really helpful to you in designing and getting out there to sell more, and see if there are any questions that I can try to answer.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Colman. This is great information. I don't see any questions in the chat. So again, this is a manageable group. If you have any questions, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask them at this time. And I had one I was thinking of as you were talking. So the 90-day revenue sprint, following that, how long did you say is an ideal time to then come off that sprint, because you can't maintain it for forever? And then how much time until you hit your next sprint, or what does that look like?
That's a good question. We feel that 90 days is the maximum time an individual, even a full-time salesperson, can spend just keeping the pedal to the metal. It's a huge effort. It requires a lot of concentration. It requires some simple tools. That's why we designed the funnel, the accelerator funnel. Many people, many firms, many companies use CRM systems, customer relationship management systems. The problem with those is that it takes so much time to enter information, and it doesn't set your priorities for you. You can't go to it, whether it's Salesforce or any other one, and say, what are my top 10 priorities? You can color code them. You can put priorities in there. That doesn't really help you in terms of a sales opportunity. At least I haven't seen that. Plus, it takes too long to work. By using a simple visual system, you can run for a week or two and not have to look at a computer except to call, call up information that you want to use from the past week's meeting or something like that. It's a much simpler way to do it. And in the course that we have, there are 20 lessons. They're from 5 to 8 minutes long. And so those 3 modules, on your mark, go, get set. The running time is just 2 hours. There are questions at the end of each module, at each lesson, to kind of reinforce what people have been trying to learn and utilize. And then there's a PDF at the end with all of the questions. So one of the things we find people do, they carry that PDF around with them. It's broken down into easily readable elements. And if they're out on meeting with somebody and they're not sure about the next appointment and what they need to say, they can go back to it and refer it. So it's like a desk reference, if you will. And again, the whole idea is to support whatever you can during that sprint. In terms you asked about beyond 90 days, I don't know that I would do it more than once a year.
Okay.
Even a full-time, highly trained salesperson has a respite. They have to do other things. They have to learn new services, new products. They have to communicate with customers and stay in touch, keep the relationships going on an ongoing basis. They may need some special training in their own organizations. They may find that there are some distractions that the company that they're working for, the firm that they're working for, need to be resolved, and they've got some responsibility to help do that. It's a more traditional approach during that period of time. But if you've been in a sales sprint, a lot of what you do in the future of selling becomes a lot simpler.
Great information. And and a follow-up then, if I may, if you have a team of people, would you recommend then one person doing a sprint one quarter and then have somebody else doing a sprint a following quarter, so then you constantly have somebody in a sprint while then the other salesperson is somewhat doing their maintenance and building those relationships that then they've established while they were on their own sprint?
That's a really great question. It implies a lot of different kind of management decisions. You would really need to understand your company, the products, the services, if it's a service organization like a law firm, an accounting firm, a range of things. If you have a sales team, very often they are focused on a new product or a new service, or maybe it's a seasonal kind of thing that they're doing, and so they really have to focus on those. My initial response when I heard your question was, I don't want to burn out everybody at the same time. It is an ambitious process to work, and it may be that you want to try it out with 1 or 2 people, or maybe you do it with 2 or 3 people a quarter. Maybe you have them working in teams, so there may be a sprint team that's going to concentrate on the customers, the clients, the prospects that they have, and they can support each other, and maybe it makes the process work better. There's a range of things, but that's really a good question, and it's a management decision. And again, it's based on a lot of factors that only the manager, the director, the president of the company, or of that particular business unit would understand.
So, Allan, most of the comments you've made so far are appropriate for businesses that are selling products or services. Sounds like more of a B2B scenario, but what if you're a B2C retail business? You've got a store, let's say on Beverly Drive, and you're selling men's suits, or you've got a jewelry store, or, how does it apply to a B2C scenario?
It's a good question. That's a really good question also. And I think what you need to do is you've got to establish the sprint mentality, but you're using other tactics and techniques. A men's store, for example, does not really have the active person-to-person process that many others do, except they can. There's no reason why a list of good customers for that men's shop, why a list of people that have come in before and haven't bought for many years can't be called on a regular basis, phoned, saying, hey, we've noticed that you haven't been here in a while. We've got some great new things. Come on in. We'd be happy to see you. Maybe they increase some of their marketing tools to try to get people to come in. So maybe they're doing more on social media, more on, hopefully they've been gathering the emails and texts for all of their customers for many years. And it's a built-in tool to start using and following up. So perhaps they send out a notice to, let's assume, 200 people. They have 5 salespeople in their store. And each person gets, let's say, 25 or 30 or 50 people. And you're asking them in their downtime to call those 25 or 30 or 40 people during the week. And most of them will probably be voicemail messages. Why not follow them up? Hey, I missed you on the call I just made. We're having a great sale, or we've got some wonderful new products, or we've missed you in a while. Come on in and have a glass of champagne to celebrate the season of Christmas coming up. And there are things that you can do that I think would be accelerating, not perhaps to the same face-to-face degree, but I think still concentrating more on trying to bring more people into their store. Does that make sense, Larry?
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, opening the floor up to any other questions. Alan, we always say if there aren't any questions, that means you're doing an amazing job covering what you're covering. So good job.
Well, thank you. Again, I just want to emphasize that you don't want to be chasing 2 rabbits. And one of the reasons we urge people, if they're going to get into an accelerated program, is to really concentrate and focus and make that clear and direct, and hold yourself and others in your sales team or your marketing management team, if you have a team, accountable for what you're doing and what they're doing on a weekly basis. Don't put it off. And then lastly, keep in mind that a sprint can work. And as long as you've got answers ready, that would be the 3rd key element. Having the answers ready and looking for opportunities to use them, this can really work and be successful. And one of the things, by the way, Nick, you and I talked about, is I'd be happy to offer anybody on a call an opportunity to spend a half an hour together and just brainstorm. I've done some things with others that have been on other calls where we've actually taken the accelerator funnel and tried to make it apply to what they're currently doing. And if people are interested, if I can do this, or interested in the course, it's if you go to, our company's name is the Closers Group, for closing more business. So if you were to go to our website, closersgroup.com/courses, closersgroup.com/courses, there's a lot more information that might be helpful. And again, I'd be happy to talk with any of you. Nick, you have my, should I put my information in the chat? I don't want to be overly pushy here.
No, please include your contact information. I'm sure people would appreciate that.
Okay. Okay, I put my email address and we can go from there. You have the courses access as well, and that'll give you a lot more information. Plus there's some fun video on there that you might really enjoy. And again, to summarize, don't sit around, and my guess is from watching the people on this call and recognizing a couple of you, I think nobody's sitting around that I know, but the opportunities are there even to get out of COVID now, or get so active that when this thing is over, you're going to be ahead of the game. And if your numbers are working well, great. Expand them, grow them, increase that ROI. And keep in mind that Larry Johnson, who's helped organize this program and others, is a great source for information with the Small Business Administration, with the Small Business Development Center at El Camino College. It's a great guy to get to know, and I'm delighted to see him on the call. And Nick, thank you very much for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's absolutely our pleasure. And thank you to you. Like you said, thank you to Larry Johnson for their support over at the Small Business Development Center. They've absolutely just been crucial to the business community, especially during this time. So I'm glad that I think, not glad for the pandemic, but I'm happy that it's somewhat highlighted the assistance that they can be to different businesses. So if you have any questions, how to get in contact with Small Business Development Center, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my contact information in the chat. But yeah, they're a great resource to know.